Let's unpack all of this with Sana Hashmi, an author and fellow at Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation, and she's speaking to us from Taipei. Sana, thanks for joining us on this news hour. When we've been talking about these demonstrations, we've used the word unprecedented a lot, not just because of the images and videos we've seen coming out of China, but also because some of these protesters have actually called for President Xi Jinping to step down. This is just not something that we hear or see coming out of China.
No, such protests are definitely unprecedented and novel. And there are several reasons behind that, not just because we are not used to seeing protests in China, specifically since 1989 after the Tiananmen massacre, but also because what we are seeing is their solidarity with minorities, their solidarity with whatever is happening in Xinjiang as well. And there is anger, there is frustration among people in China. So now after he has secured the third term, she is increasingly being called an emperor. So he's just not called an emperor outside, but also in China. He's being called as a dictator, as an authoritarian dictator. So this is also happening in China, and I feel this is unprecedented. This is something that we haven't really seen in China, at least since the 1989. And it also tells us the CCP is becoming far less tolerant. They are actually valuing their policies that are so anti-people over the freedom of people, over the economy.
Where do you see these protests going? Because it was just today that we've heard that some restrictions have been eased. I mean, they're still sticking to a lot of the lockdown rules. But in the coming days and possibly weeks, how do you see China's government reacting to all of this?
I think they're not really rolling back the zero COVID policy. This is something that we have seen today. We have seen a statement from MFA as well. But about the protest, what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to subside the protest. There is not massive crackdown in China right now. There's no violent crackdown. What we are just seeing barricading. We are seeing that police is checking the phones of people, and they're trying to dissuade people from protesting. But the situation remains volatile. We also have to see how people are going to mobilize in times to come. Are the protests going to be violent, or people are going to be mobilized more? So it all depends on that. But the possibility of massive crackdown, violent crackdown from the government side, I think we can't really rule that thing out.
Well, we've seen some international reaction, and one of them is actually from the British government just over the last 2 days about the arrest and alleged assault of a BBC journalist in China covering those protests. And this was, according to the BBC and their journalist, violence towards him. But this does seem to be having global implications and reactions.
Oh, definitely. Of course, I what I feel is that the reactions are very slow. We have seen statement from Australia, we have seen from Britain, but I think a lot of countries are will be slow in reacting first, because I think China will try to label it as a foreign interference or for example, color revolution. So I think countries will be very careful in issuing statements so that it doesn't really deteriorate their relationship with China further. But I think it has international implication, and also how countries are going to engage China. And after G20, what we saw that there was an attempt to kind of have achieve partial normalization with China, specifically from the US and Australian side. And now these countries are focusing on the value-based coalition, the value-based engagement. So where it leads to their engagement with China, I think it's going to be a very difficult situation for countries that believe in rules-based order.
And so many countries do believe in rules-based order, but sometimes at the end of the day, economic well-being for these countries trumps rules-based order and sometimes even human rights, doesn't it?
I think this is something that these countries have to think about. Are they going to value, or are they going to focus on human rights or engagement with China? We know that Macron is supposed to visit China in February. So is the visit going to happen even after these protests? But of course, I think it's too early to say, because we have to see what phase these protests are going to take. But of course, I feel it's a difficult choice for countries such as Germany and France, and of course for the US that has just restarted talking to China.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the coming weeks. Sana Hashmi, appreciate you speaking to us live there from Taipei.